What if I told you that some of heavy metal's wildest stories actually turned out to be true? Behind the leather jackets, roaring guitars, and endless tours were secrets that could have torn entire bands apart. From shocking backstage scandals to forbidden romances and wild rumors that spread like wildfire through the scene, these legends weren't just playing with fire, they were living in it. The truth was louder than their amps, and when it finally came out, it left fans stunned. Here are 30 heavy metal legends whose craziest rumors turned out to be real. 30. Metallica fans once whispered about a tragic accident that changed Metallica forever. Sadly, it wasn't gossip. In 1986, bassist Cliff Burton died when the band's tour bus slid off an icy Swedish road. The story sounded like another rock rumor, until reports confirmed every heartbreaking detail. Cliff was only 24. His loss hit the band hard, shaping their sound and spirit for years to come. The rumor of Metallica's darkest night turned out to be painfully true. 29. Dimebag Darrell. When fans first heard that Dimebag Darrell was shot during a live show, many thought it couldn't be real. But the horrifying truth spread fast. He was gunned down on stage in 2004 while performing with Damage Plan. The tragedy left the metal world in shock. What sounded like another internet hoax became one of the most devastating moments in heavy metal history. Forever marking the night a guitar hero lost his life doing what he loved. 28. Sharon Osbourne. For years, people whispered that Sharon Osbourne wasn't just Ozzy's wife. She was the mastermind behind his entire empire. Turns out the rumor was spot on. Sharon handled his contracts, planned his comebacks, and even protected him from his own destructive habits. She turned Ozzy's chaos into a brand, proving she was more than just a manager. The so-called puppet master gossip became reality, showing that behind the Prince of Darkness stood a woman who ran the show. 27. Zakk Wylde. When rumors spread that Ozzy Osbourne fired Zakk Wylde due to his drinking, most fans dismissed them as tour gossip. But later, Zakk himself admitted the rumor was true. His heavy drinking had become too much, even for Ozzy's wild standards. After years of loyalty and shredding solos, he was forced to step back. The firing wasn't about talent, it was survival. The rumor that sounded like tabloid trash turned out to be rock-bottom truth. 26. King Diamond. People thought King Diamond's satanic image was just stage theatrics, but it was far more personal. Unlike many metal performers, he openly followed Satanism as a belief system, not a gimmick. He spoke about rituals, philosophy, and personal freedom long before shock value became trendy. What fans once dismissed as dark performance art was actually his real identity. The rumor that King Diamond truly lived what he sang about wasn't a story, it was the absolute truth. 25. Kerry King. When fans claimed Slayer's Kerry King wasn't just pretending with those pentagrams and fiery lyrics, many thought it was just a gimmick. But King's fascination with dark symbolism was very real. He surrounded himself with imagery rooted in rebellion, religion, and the occult, not for shock value, but as part of his worldview. The crosses, fire, and attitude weren't just props. The rumor that Kerry King truly embraced the darkness he sang about was as real as his riffs. 24. Randy Rhoads. It sounded too tragic to be true. A beloved guitarist dying in a reckless stunt. But that was exactly how Randy Rhoads lost his life in 1982. During a tour stop, a plane joyride meant to prank bandmates turned fatal when it clipped Ozzy's tour bus and crashed. Fans thought it was exaggerated rock folklore, but reports proved every word. The rumor of that horrific prank turned out to be one of metal's most painful truths. 23. Tony Iommi. Before Black Sabbath even changed music forever, Tony Iommi suffered a factory accident that cut off the tips of 2 fingers. Some fans thought that rumor was impossible. How could a guitarist play like that? But he did. He melted down plastic bottles to create fingertip caps and tuned his guitar lower, giving birth to the heavy, haunting metal sound we know today. The rumor of his injury wasn't just true, it literally shaped the future of metal. 22. Bruce Dickinson. It started as a wild rumor that Iron Maiden's Bruce Dickinson wasn't just a singer, he was a licensed pilot. Then fans saw the truth soaring overhead. Bruce not only flew planes, he captained Iron Maiden's private jet, Ed Force One, during world tours. Balancing concerts and cockpit controls, he proved he was more than a frontman. He was a high-flying metal legend. The rumor that he could command both a crowd and a Boeing turned out completely true. 21. Eddie Van Halen. When word spread that Eddie Van Halen built his own guitar from spare parts, it sounded like another tall tale. But the rumor became reality when he revealed the Frankenstrat, a homemade blend of Gibson and Fender parts. He created it to get the perfect tone he couldn't buy anywhere else. That one DIY experiment became his signature sound. What began as whispered curiosity among fans turned out to be a true story of pure innovation. 20. Corey Taylor. When fans whispered that Corey Taylor was ready to leave Slipknot, most brushed it off. But later, Corey admitted the burnout and chaos were real. Constant touring, emotional strain, and personal demons nearly pushed him to walk away from the mask and the madness. The rumor that seemed like tabloid drama turned out to be true, showing that even the loudest voice in metal sometimes struggles with silence. 19. Alice Cooper. The story of Alice Cooper throwing a chicken into the crowd sounded too wild to believe, but it really happened. In 1969, someone tossed a live chicken on stage. Alice, thinking it could fly, threw it back, and the crowd tore it apart. The media ran with it, creating a twisted legend. The rumor that Alice Cooper sacrificed animals was false, but the chaos that night was undeniably, disturbingly real. 18. Dave Grohl. After Nirvana's tragic end, rumors said Dave Grohl started Foo Fighters to cope with the loss. That quiet speculation was painfully true. He recorded the first album almost entirely by himself, using music to heal after Kurt Cobain's death. What fans thought was just a creative outlet became his therapy, and later one of rock's biggest success stories. The rumor of grief turning into greatness wasn't gossip, it was the honest foundation of Foo Fighters. 17. David Lee Roth. When stories spread that Van Halen split because of clashing egos, many blamed the press. But behind the smiles and spandex, the tension was very real. David Lee Roth's desire for solo fame clashed with Eddie's vision for the band. The fiery arguments and creative disagreements eventually exploded, forcing Roth to walk away. The rumor that egos destroyed Van Halen wasn't industry gossip, it was the real sound of a band breaking apart. 16. Phil Anselmo. Fans hoped the rumor about Phil Anselmo's shocking onstage outburst was fake. Sadly, it wasn't. In 2016, footage surfaced of him giving a racist salute and shouting offensive words. The backlash was instant, and his reputation took a hard hit. What some thought was a twisted rumor became undeniable proof that even metal icons can fall from grace. The truth hit heavier than any Pantera riff ever could. 15. Kurt Cobain. Before Nirvana changed music forever, there were whispers that Kurt Cobain secretly loved heavy metal. Fans thought it was a joke, but he really did grow up listening to Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, and Metallica. He even said those bands inspired his early guitar style before grunge took over his sound. The rumor of his hidden metal side wasn't just true, it proved that even the voice of grunge had a heart that beat to heavy riffs. 14. Ronnie James Dio. The rumor that Dio was kicked out of Black Sabbath for secretly boosting his own vocals in the studio sounded like classic rock gossip. But it was completely true. During the live Evil recordings, tensions exploded when bandmates accused him of sneaking into late-night mixing sessions. The fallout ended his time with Sabbath. That story of betrayal and pride wasn't a made-up feud. It was the brutal truth behind one of metal's greatest splits. 13. Rob Halford. For decades, fans whispered that Rob Halford was hiding something deeply personal. The rumors about his sexuality were true, but fear kept him silent in an era when being openly gay could destroy a career. When he finally came out, the world embraced him. It wasn't a scandal. It was liberation. The rumor that once followed him like a shadow became a story of courage, showing the strength behind the voice of heavy metal. 12. Vince Neil. The story of Vince Neil's fatal car crash sounded like rock mythology. Fast cars, alcohol, tragedy. But every detail was true. In 1984, Vince crashed while driving drunk, killing Hanoi Rocks drummer Nicholas Razzle Dingley. The rumor that haunted Motley Crue wasn't just gossip. It was a grim reminder of how wild living came with real consequences. Vince carried that guilt for years, turning one reckless night into one of metal's most tragic truths. 11. Lemmy Kilmister. The rumors about Lemmy's wild habits were so extreme that they sounded made up, but they weren't. He truly lived on a steady diet of whiskey and amphetamines for decades, claiming it was just his fuel. Despite it all, he kept performing into his 70s, defying every rule of health and logic. The stories that once seemed impossible turned out to be proof of Lemmy's unbreakable spirit. He didn't just sing about excess, he lived it completely. 10. Slash. For years, fans whispered that Slash's wild lifestyle almost killed him. It sounded like another rock exaggeration, until he confirmed it. In the early 90s, his heart stopped after years of heavy drinking and drug use. Doctors told him he had only 6 weeks to live, yet he survived, rebuilt his life, and kept playing. The rumor that Slash danced dangerously close to death was completely true, proving not every legend gets its wings peacefully. 9. Nikki Sixx. When rumors spread that Motley Crue's Nikki Sixx actually died from an overdose and came back, most thought it was an overblown tale. But paramedics really did revive him with 2 adrenaline shots after he was declared legally dead. That near-death moment inspired the song "Kickstart My Heart." The story wasn't rock fantasy, it was literal resurrection. The rumor of his death became one of metal's most chilling true tales of survival. 8. Tommy Lee. Stories about Tommy Lee going to jail sounded like just another wild Motley Crue rumor, but this one was real. In 1998, he served several months in jail for assault. The scandal shocked fans who thought the chaos was only part of his bad boy image. Instead, the headlines confirmed it. Tommy's off-stage life was just as reckless as his drumming. The rumor of jail time wasn't fiction. It was the real cost of fame and fury. 7. James Hetfield. When fans heard James Hetfield was burned during a Metallica concert, it sounded too horrific to be true. But it really happened in 1992 in Montreal. A misfired pyro blast engulfed him in flames, burning his hands, arms, and face. Somehow, he survived, healed, and returned to the stage weeks later. The rumor that Metallica's frontman faced fire for his art turned out to be a terrifyingly true chapter in their history. Lars Ulrich. The rumor that Lars Ulrich personally fought to shut down Napster sounded like media, drama, but it was exactly true. He became the face of the battle against free music downloads in 2000, filing lawsuits and standing up to fans and corporations alike. The backlash was brutal, but Lars stood his ground, saying he was protecting musicians' rights. The rumor of him waging war on piracy wasn't gossip. It changed the entire music industry forever. 5. Marilyn Manson. Everyone heard the wild rumor that Marilyn Manson removed his ribs, but that was pure fiction. The truth behind him, however, was darker. Stories about drug abuse, stage chaos, and being banned from venues were completely real. Manson lived in controversy, pushing every limit the industry had. He wasn't just playing a character, he became the controversy itself. The rib story was false, but the destruction that surrounded him was shockingly, undeniably true. 4. Axl Rose. Rumors of Axl Rose fighting with bandmates, fans, and even other stars sounded exaggerated, but they weren't. Axl's temper became legendary. From storming off stage mid-song to getting into public shouting matches, every fiery tale turned out to be real. His volatile nature caused delays, walkouts, and endless chaos for Guns N' Roses. The stories weren't fueled by tabloids, they were born from Axl's unpredictable rage and passion, both of which kept the world watching in disbelief. 3. Dave Mustaine. The story of Dave Mustaine being thrown out of Metallica seemed too dramatic to believe, but it actually happened. His drinking and violent temper became so bad that the band sent him home on a bus before recording their first album. That painful truth fueled his fire to form Megadeth, turning Betrayal into revenge through music. The rumor of his explosive attitude wasn't gossip, it was the spark that created one of metal's fiercest rivalries. 2. Gene Simmons. When fans said Gene Simmons once set himself on fire during a Kiss concert, many laughed it off. But the flames were very real. One performance went wrong when the wind blew fire back into his face, burning his hair and skin. Instead of stopping, he finished the show like nothing had happened. The rumor of his fiery accident wasn't a myth. It proved that Gene would literally risk everything for the spectacle of rock and roll. 1. Ozzy Osbourne. The most unbelievable rumor in metal history turned out to be completely true. In 1982, Ozzy Osbourne actually bit the head off a real bat on stage, thinking it was a fake prop. The crowd screamed, and Ozzy was rushed for rabies shots afterward. What started as gossip became one of rock's most shocking true stories. That night didn't just define his madness, it sealed his name as the ultimate wild legend of heavy metal. So now you know the truth behind some of heavy metal's most unbelievable rumors. Turns out the wild stories weren't so wild after all. From secret feuds to shocking confessions, these legends prove that the real drama often happens off stage. But which of these revelations surprised you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button if you love discovering the untold side of rock history, and don't forget to subscribe, because the next story might just blow your mind. What if I told you that some of heavy metal's biggest icons, men who once lived louder than life itself, spent their final days broke and forgotten? These were the voices that shook arenas, the faces plastered on posters, the legends fans thought would never fade. But behind the fame, money troubles, addiction, and betrayal slowly tore their worlds apart. When the music stopped, so did the fortune, and what followed was heartbreak few ever saw coming. From chart-topping fame to penniless endings, these are 8 heavy metal stars who died in poverty and the tragic stories behind how they lost everything. 8. Wayne Static. Wayne Static was more than just another frontman, he was the face of an entire generation of industrial and nu metal fans. With his gravity-defying hair, mechanical riffs, and cyberpunk persona, he made Static X one of the most unique bands of the late 90s. Their hit, Push It, turned Wayne into a modern metal icon, touring the world, selling records, and headlining major festivals. From the outside, he seemed unstoppable. But fame doesn't always mean fortune, and behind the flashing lights, Wayne's world was slowly falling apart. When record sales began to drop and his bandmates went their separate ways, Wayne struggled to keep the dream alive. He poured every last dollar into continuing his career, booking tours, paying staff, and buying studio time, all out of his own pocket. Instead of living like a rock star, he lived on the road, selling personal belongings just to keep performing. His wife, Tara Ray, stood by him as they lived modestly inside their tour bus, chasing the same dream that once made him famous. The financial pressure, combined with years of exhaustion and substance use, took a toll on his health. In 2014, Wayne Static died in his sleep, just before his 49th birthday. There was no luxury, no massive estate, just a man who gave everything to his music until there was nothing left to give. He didn't just die a heavy metal legend, he died a reminder that sometimes the loudest lives end in quiet poverty. 7. Paul Samson. Paul Samson's name might not ring as loud as Iron Maiden or Judas Priest, but his fingerprints are all over the birth of the British heavy metal sound. In the late 70s, his band Samson was a powerhouse of energy, playing alongside rising groups that would go on to conquer the world. One of his early bandmates was none other than Bruce Dickinson, who would later join Iron Maiden and become one of metal's greatest vocalists. But while others found fame and fortune, Paul's story took a heartbreaking turn. Despite his talent and influence, success always seemed to slip through his fingers. His band faced endless lineup changes, poor management, and record label issues that drained both his spirit and his wallet. As years went by, he was no longer playing massive festivals. Instead, he performed in small clubs for loyal fans, often earning just enough to cover travel and gear costs. His love for music never faded, even when financial struggles forced him to live a simple, almost invisible life compared to his peers. By the early 2000s, Paul was battling cancer, but continued working on new material. He refused to give up, recording songs even when he couldn't afford proper studio time. Sadly, in 2002, Paul Samson passed away at just 49 years old. He died with little money, but with the heart of a true musician who never surrendered his passion. Paul wasn't just a forgotten guitarist, he was a heavy metal warrior who lived and died for the music he helped create. 6. Mike Starr. Mike Starr's story is one of heartbreaking contrast, from standing on the biggest stages in rock to dying alone, broke, and haunted by regret. As the original bassist for Alice in Chains, Mike helped shape the sound of early grunge and heavy metal fusion. He played on the band's first 2 albums, including Dirt, which sold millions and became one of the defining records of the 1,990 seconds. For a brief moment, he lived the rock star dream, fame, fortune, and the world at his feet. But the higher he climbed, the harder the fall would be. Addiction became the ghost that followed him everywhere. His dependence on drugs cost him his career, his friendships, and his place in one of the most successful bands of the era. As Alice in Chains continued to rise, Mike was left behind, trying to rebuild his life, while his finances and health crumbled. He appeared on the reality show Celebrity Rehab, openly sharing his pain and guilt, especially over the death of his friend and bandmate, Lane Staley. Despite moments of hope, Mike couldn't escape his inner demons. He lived in quiet isolation, struggling to afford even basic living expenses. In 2011, at just 44 years old, he was found dead from an overdose in a modest apartment in Salt Lake City. There was no fame left, no fortune, only the echoes of a life that once shook arenas. Mike Starr's death wasn't just another rock tragedy, it was a sobering reminder that behind the music that defined a generation stood a man who lost everything trying to find peace. 5. Pete Way. Pete Way was a rock and roll wild man, the kind of musician who lived every lyric he played. As the co-founder and bassist of UFO, Pete helped shape the sound that inspired generations of metal bands, including Iron Maiden. He lived fast, played louder than anyone, and became the poster child for rock excess. But like many who rise too high, too fast, his world eventually came crashing down. At the peak of UFO's fame, Pete was a force of nature on stage, but offstage, his life was chaos. Years of hard living, endless touring, and substance abuse slowly destroyed his finances and health. When the glory days faded, he was left battling addiction and scrambling to make ends meet. He sold guitars and memorabilia, priceless pieces of his career, just to cover bills. Despite helping shape heavy metal's DNA, he was never financially secure. Even as his health declined, Pete refused to slow down. He kept performing in small clubs, driven more by love for music than money. But time caught up with him. In 2020, Pete Way died at the age of 69 from injuries after a fall. He had no fortune, no mansion, no spotlight, just a lifetime of memories and a legacy that outlived him. Pete Way's death reflected the cruel side of fame. A man who gave everything to rock and roll but left this world with almost nothing. 4. Warrell Dane. Warrell Dane had one of the most haunting voices in metal. Deep, powerful, and filled with emotion. His vocals defined Sanctuary and Nevermore, two bands that earned critical acclaim but never reached the commercial heights they deserved. While others in the genre achieved fame and wealth, Worrell's career was marked by constant struggle. He was respected but not rewarded, praised but not paid. His music was ahead of its time, and the world didn't always catch up. Behind the scenes, Worrell battled personal demons. Years of touring, poor management, and modest earnings left him in financial chaos. He moved to Brazil, where recording and living costs were cheaper, hoping to finish his solo album and restart his career. Far from home, he lived quietly, often borrowing studio time and relying on local musicians to help him keep his dream alive. He wasn't chasing fame anymore, he just wanted to make music before time ran out, but his body couldn't take it anymore. Years of health issues, addiction, and exhaustion finally caught up to him. In December 2017, while recording his solo album in Sao Paulo, Worrell Dane died from a heart attack. He was 66 years old and far from the bright lights that once shone on him. His death came quietly, in a foreign land, without riches or recognition. Yet, his voice continues to echo through the hearts of fans who understand what he gave to metal. Worrell Dane died poor in money but rich in legacy, a tragic symbol of how greatness doesn't always lead to fortune. 3. Scott Columbus. Scott Columbus was the thunder behind Manowar, the self-proclaimed kings of metal. With his massive steel drum kit and fierce energy, he gave the band its earth-shaking power. For years, he toured the world, performing for thousands of die-hard fans who saw him as the heartbeat of true heavy metal. But behind that powerful image was a man who quietly struggled to keep his life together after leaving the band that defined him. When Scott parted ways with Manowar after internal conflicts, his career never fully recovered. He played with smaller bands and local projects, but the pay was nothing compared to the heights he